Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Your Life. I am Paula Vail here, and I'm excited to just share another great show with you. And I am excited to share that the show is not only available on KMET AM radio, it's also on the KMET TV channel and YouTube. So wherever you're finding us, thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful. I have an amazing guest for you today. I am happy to share that we have Vanessa May. She is a London-based nutritional therapist and well-being coach. 2 years ago, her son died unexpectedly, and she started to write as a way of processing her grief and trauma. Vanessa now works as a holistic grief coach using a unique mind, body, spirit approach. Her mission is to support others who have experienced loss through both her work and her book called Love Untethered. Love Untethered is a candid account of every parent's worst fear, the loss of a child. For anyone who is going through a bereavement or knows someone who is, Love Untethered will provide a lifeline. It's an honest and brave account of how you go on after someone important has died. Based on her personal and professional experience, Vanessa provides advice on making the grieving process a little more bearable when your world has been shattered beyond recognition. I first off want to say thank you, Vanessa, for writing this book and sharing so much with everyone. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
It is just an honor to have you. Well, let's begin. Share with us, what triggered you to share in this book and create this book for others with what you have gone through. I mean, that's just huge and so beautiful of you.
Well, thank you. I just think everyone's very different in how they process their grief. I was already working as a nutritional therapist and a well-being coach, so I was working in the area of holistic health, mind, body, spirit, helping people achieve what they wanted to in life. And so I suppose even though I couldn't work when my son first died because I was so very traumatized, I eventually thought, how am I going to use the skills that I had to go forward in my new life, which is so radically altered because I felt like an entirely different person to the one who was all about kind of, thinking positive thoughts and all about well-being and living your best life, and how I was going to balance that with the life I was now leading. So that's really, so it was natural to me to want to help others because that's what I was already doing. It was like, how was I going to do that now as, when my life had been turned upside down? So firstly, before I arrived at that, the main reason I started writing was because I didn't find a therapist that I felt really understood what I was going through. Because I do feel that when you're a bereaved parent in particular, it really takes another bereaved parent to really get it. And also because I had a sort of spiritual belief developing that my son was still with me, that he continued to be close by, and that he was communicating with me, and the therapist was slightly dismissive of that. So I thought, what do I do with all these feelings that I don't really understand and I've never experienced before? So a friend of mine said, well, why don't you start writing? Why don't you start writing? And I thought, well, okay. So I did, and then I found David Kessler's writing through loss and trauma course. David Kess, as you probably know, is the leading grief expert in the US and all around the world. I later trained to be a certified grief educator with him. And so this started to develop, and it started to help me. And although it didn't take away the pain of my loss, it helped me understand it, helped me process it. That and reading, I read a lot of other books, which is another reason why I ended up thinking, well, I felt my story was reflected in books written by other grieving mothers or just people who were bereaved in any way, but it had been a profound loss. And I thought, well, I want to do that. I want to sort of hand the baton over and help others through my book as I was helped by the writing of others. So that's how I came to write it. And then in the process of writing it, I started to think, well, how can I help other people through the skills I have? And it occurred to me particularly because through my work as a nutritional therapist, which is all about how the body responds to stress, I started to think grief is the biggest stress you can put on your body and your mind and your spirit, but particularly your body. And I had such extreme symptoms, and I was eventually diagnosed with PTSD. So I was very traumatized. And so I thought, well, that's not something I'm really reading about in a lot of the books I've read. So maybe, as well as telling my story in the hope that people will resonate with what I've been through, but maybe I can have a section in the book where I offer ways that you might be able to soften the pain, go forward, find meaning, find purpose in your life, continue your bond with the person you've lost. So I suppose that would be the sort of the positive of the terribleness of the situation of losing a child or someone you love beyond measure. And so I started to think, yeah, I can do this. I can write about all the physical symptoms that you go through that really aren't acknowledged often. And I can offer ways that you might be able to support yourself, through diet, through supplements, through lifestyle measures. And so that's kind of where I started. And then I thought, well, yeah. And then the idea of becoming a holistic grief coach appealed to me, because obviously grief coaching, I was already a coach, but the holistic part is bringing the mind, the emotions, the body, because I had that skill set, and the spirit, because I was growing a spiritual belief through losing my child. So yeah, that's how
So really, with your knowledge of all those different spectrums, it's like all of these spectrums can be a part of you getting through and moving on day to day after that loss that you can help others with.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It is often one day at a time, and grief isn't linear, so you can one day be thinking, oh, I often talk about a basket of resources for people. So I ask them to think of all the things that help, because often in early grief they go, nothing helps, I'm never going to feel any different, this is just hell. And I say, well, what does help? And then they'll say, well, I had a soak in the bath with some aromatherapy oils. And I go, oh, well, let's put that in your basket. It'll be very small things. Or getting out in nature, or gardening, or planting a tree for the person that you've lost, or a rose bush. And so you formulate all the things that might just ease the pain, because there are some losses that you're never going to fully get over, but you can hope that the pain will soften, and you can find a way to live around what's happened. You grow a life around your grief through finding some kind of purpose or meaning in your life. So that's really what I'm trying to do, is to find some meaning, not in the death, but find a meaning in what's happened to me, and find a purpose. And my purpose became very clear, which was to help others who've gone through a similar situation in a way that I couldn't find help. So I know what I didn't get. So I'm now thinking, so that's what I'll offer.
Yeah. Oh, and it's such a point that, you being a coach who has actually experienced something to that degree, it really sets you apart than someone that I feel for you. I mean, I can only imagine the experience, what that does. And would you say that when we lose a child or loved one, it can open us up to, well, that I think they may still be with me. I think they're here. I think it really opens us up to that beautiful knowledge, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think some of that I already had, but it just opened me up. I think you become cracked open, your heart is broken, and then there's that Rumi quote that that's where the light gets in. And there is an element of truth in that. Of course, you'd really rather it not happen, obviously, goes without saying. But if it has happened, you start to question, well, what's this about? What's what happens to us? This can't be the end. And if you see the body of a loved one when they've passed, my first thought was, well, I wonder where he is, because he's not in this shell. And I just sort of knew that he was somewhere else, and that I just had to find him. I had to find a way to connect with him. And I think that's quite a common feeling with a very significant loss. And I think they say 75% of bereaved parents believe they have communication with their child who's passed. And yeah, and that's a high percentage. And I think it's 70% for anyone who's lost anyone has a spiritual belief that death isn't the end. And I think it's 75% for bereaved parents, if I'm right in my memory. But so it's a lot of people, but it does something to you. It's so life-changing that it opens you up, and you start to ask the big questions. What is the purpose? What are we here for? What's life about? This can't be all it is. There must be more. Well, at least I speak for myself, because obviously not everyone feels the same, but that's my feeling.
And opening up to perhaps different beliefs or a different thought process, that really can change our lives and how we proceed from then on, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You see things differently. You sort of see the bigger picture. Yeah, it does in some way expand your life in some ways. And I think an experience like this, they say accelerates, if this is your way of thinking, but that they say accelerates soul growth. It's a massive life experience to lose a child. And so it gives you the opportunity to grow. At least that's what they say. But of course, a lot of bereaved parents go, I'd rather not, which is understandable, because the pain is so great. It really is. There's no getting away from that.
The title of your book, Love Untethered, that's a very unique title. What brought you to come up with that for the title? What inspired you to that?
Well, there's a saying which is, grief is love with no place to go. But I think there is a place for love to go. And I think, at first, and I say this in the introduction of the book, but at first, when you've lost someone you love, you think, I've got all this love and there's nowhere for it to go. But there is, there absolutely is, because your relationship, they say, death ends a life, not a relationship. So you continue to love them. Your love continues, your relationship continues. I talk to my son every day. I feel him around me. So love untethered. It's ongoing. It's untethered. It's freer now. So you think, oh, there's nowhere to put it, but there absolutely is. So whenever I hear that statement or I see it on social media, grief is love with no place to go, I think, no, there is a place for it to go, and you just continue to send it to your loved one, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's a comforting thing, and that's my truth.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
It actually really, in a way, can go even farther. I mean, it's just opened up, and yeah, you're right. The love doesn't end. It expands possibly.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
For you, what would you say was one of the key things that came to you that enabled you to deal with and move on after your son's passing? What would you say helped you the most?
I think it was the belief that I will be with him again, that we're not really separated. I don't have him in physical form, but I still have him with me. Um, and I think it's the spiritual aspect of grief that allows us to go on living, because I'm still here. So when I'm with him again, I want him to say, well done, Mum. You did really well. I could see that it was really hard. Um, so that's what I want him to be proud of me. I feel that he is, that he's proud of me for writing a book
Yeah.
under the circumstances and for helping other people. And so yes, I would say it is what keeps me going forward. And don't get me wrong, and I'll be doing a big disservice to other bereaved parents if I don't make it very clear that it can be a daily struggle. But that's what keeps me going, that he's still with me, that we'll be reunited, and we
Yeah.
still have our bond.
And it must be just, I can imagine, beyond words for you to be, coaching and helping others going through their grief. So it's like, just this big circle of hugs and caring and helping others, especially some that may feel they're alone and no one understands.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you
I mean,
don't
I
have to
don't just
understand.
work with, I don't just work with bereaved parents. I work with people who've lost brothers, sisters, parents. Um, but when I work with bereaved parents, particularly bereaved mothers, every single one has said to me, oh my goodness, it's just amazing to be talking to someone who I know gets it.
Yeah, I can
And
do.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
So that's really important to me, that people understand that I get it completely. I mean, everyone's different. No one story is the same, but there's a commonality that we all share. And sadly, so if I can just hold their hand, I can't fix it. I can't make it better for them, but I can share a few strategies and just walk alongside them really, and encourage them to go on and honor the person that they've lost.
yeah. Because it really is just continuing walking ahead, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
it
my
is.
gosh.
Keep
And
going.
your book, I mean, this can be for someone who's had the loss, someone who knows someone who's had the loss and they want to help
Absolutely.
them, can give
Yeah,
them insights and all of that. It it really is a beautiful gift and a blessing. Do
Thank you.
you see perhaps maybe doing another book down the road?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I have actually written a second book. I was asked to write a book called Supporting Your Grieving Clients, a guide for wellness practitioners. So that's sort of bringing everything together. So it's for nutritional therapists, coaches, Reiki practitioners, naturopaths, homeopaths, etc. Anyone in that sort of world, so that who hasn't experienced grief perhaps, or not to any great extent, so they understand how to work with their grieving client and be compassionate and understand how difficult it might be and how it's impacting them physically and emotionally. So that's out in February, but I definitely feel that I could do a sequel to Love Untethered, because my story covers the first year of a loss, and I think there's so much more beyond that. People grieve for forever. How does that feel? Is that ever highlighted for people? Could that be a nice companion for those further along in grief? And I'm talking particularly about child loss, losing a spouse, which is also terrible. All grief is terrible. But there are some that are more life-changing than others, I think. And so I feel I definitely would like to write another book. I seem to, unfortunately, only write about grief. Maybe I'll write a novel one day, but at the moment, I feel that's my calling,
Yeah.
and that's what I can offer.
And there's a need for that. I mean, you're helping so many, and I'm excited about the book you have coming out in February. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I will get that, and I would tell my students about it.
Brilliant.
Because,
Thank you. Well, yes.
As a
Thank you.
practitioner, you get, clients and people coming to you that are trying to deal with grief.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, that is
absolutely.
fantastic. Yes, yes. We may have to talk about that when it
We
comes
might
out.
have to talk about that one.
Um, please share with everyone, take a moment, share your website, how they can get a hold of you or get a copy of your book. Please share that with everyone.
Okay, well, I have my book here, so I'll just hold it up so you can see. It's got some stars and some blue sky. So it's called Love Untethered, How to Live When Your Child Dies. But, it's for anyone who's had a very deep loss and has been profoundly affected. And it's available, obviously I'm British, but it's available in the US, Amazon, Barnes and Noble in the UK, WH Smith, Waterstones. So there's lots of places you can get it. Um, and yeah, I have a website. I have two websites, but I'll just give you the author website, which is www.vanessamay.co.uk. So quite easy to remember. And obviously I've got another website for my holistic grief coaching. But rather than complicate things here, if you go to my author website, there's a link over to my other website if you're interested in holistic grief coaching. And yeah, and I social media, I'm on Twitter, but the main social media I use is Instagram, and I post a lot about grief. So if that's of interest to anyone, it's at may.wellbeing. So may.wellbeing on Instagram.
That is just so fantastic. With a few minutes left, Vanessa, what last words do you want to share with everyone today?
I think really another part of why I'm doing what I'm doing is because sometimes there's a lack of understanding about grief. We live in quite a grief-averse society, and sometimes people don't really know what to do with a person who's grieving. They're a little bit afraid of it. If you're a bereaved mother, you find people cross the road rather than speak to you. So I'd like to open up the conversation and make people less scared of talking to people who've had a terrible loss, so that there's more understanding and more compassion, because that's the one thing I do find when I'm working with other bereaved parents, that People are terrified. It's everyone's worst nightmare, losing a child. And losing a partner as well is terrible too. All grief is terrible, but I'm obviously talking from personal experience. So I just hope people will have more compassion, understanding for those they come across who have been through a terrible experience.
Mhm. Yeah. And, because you sharing that, really helps us know we're not alone. I remember when I was 17 and I lost a dear, dear loved one. And it's like, doesn't anyone understand how horrible this is, how sad it, no, does everyone not know how wonderful he was? And, you feel
Absolutely.
alone,
You
you know?
do. And people want you to move on, and people really want you to feel better soon. They want to fix you. And the best thing you can do if you know someone who's grieving is to just sit with them and just listen.
Mhm.
Just listen.
Yeah, that's true, because you just don't know, when you're not the one experiencing what they're and feeling, and you having all this fantastic caring and information in your book and your coaching. It's just so beautiful, Vanessa, and such a gift to so many. I am very grateful.
No, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
And one quick question now, with the coaching you do, so is that anyone can contact you? Is it through Zoom?
Yeah, I work over Zoom, so I can work with anyone wherever they are. So if you're in the US, then I have some clients over the pond. So yeah, just get in touch with me, and yeah, we can have a chat and see if I can help. But yeah,
Well,
in the
thank
meantime, my
you.
book's out, and you'll get some advice from that too.
Yes, yes. And I just have to share, everyone, the book is so amazing and so wonderful, and truly a gift for all of us, truly a gift for mankind. I'm really grateful. Oh,
Thank you, Paula.
yes, I
Thank
love
you.
it.
I appreciate it.
Oh, everyone have a fantastic day, and feel free to email me with any questions, paula@wellnessinspired.com. And thank you so much, Vanessa. It's just been an honor having you, and love, hugs, and blessings. Everyone
Thank
out there,
you.
love, hugs, and blessings, and happy holidays. Yep, it's so exciting. Christmas decorations are up, and we're having fun. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. See you next week. Bye.